So thank you all for being here. Thanks to, of course, you organizers. I'm part of this organization, but actually my role was quite minor. So I thank all the others who really did work. And so my role here is the role of a cognitive neuroscientist, as I try to be. It's not a clinician. I'm not a clinician. But I'm interested in brain processes, consciousness, also from the point of view of philosophy of mind and psychology. So what I will try to do in this 20 minutes is to give you a general broad framework about how to interpret other states of consciousness and within them psychedelic states. Of course, in such a short time, I have a lot of time, a job, and I should certainly will not succeed, but this is the intention. So I will start with kind of a symbolic language that comes out of the other states of consciousness, asking you to look at this very famous drawing on the right. It is from Francisco Goya, the famous painter, Spanish painter, of the 18th century, in the center of the Enlightenment. Well, in Enlightenment, reason, rationality, logical thinking was really valued a lot, and we are still under the influence of this perspective about how humans should use their mind. And this painting has actually been interpreted and is still interpreted today coherently with this philosophy. The title that Goya himself gave is "The Dream of Reason Produces Monsters." And the usual interpretations is that we need reason because otherwise there are monsters in operations of mind. But actually, if you look at what Goya meant, in many ways, even writing about this torture and so saying very explicitly that was not what meant. What he wrote is, imagination without reason creates chaos. Well, that's fine, but he added, when balanced with rationality, imagination leads to creativity and wonder. This is a completely different message. It's not saying that the more reason we have, the better. It is saying we do have monsters in our minds, we do have chaos, we start from that, and we have to balance that with reason and rationality to have activity, a sense of wonder, insights, improvement, art, so on and so forth. This is a completely different message. And I believe that we are leading, and maybe this conference is a kind of testimony of that, in a cultural age in which we are moving the interpretation of what the rationality is more towards this Goya's way of interpreting. That is to say, we are not rational beings. Our consciousness is full, as we are going to see in a moment, of different states characterized by irrationality, hallucinations, strong emotions. And they are possibly very important for clinical use, for personal development use, for all the great achievements that perhaps humans have reached in their history. But we have to take that as a starting point that can be balanced in rationality, for example, scientific investigation, first of all, to have the best from us as complete humans, integrated humans, not just individually, but also as societies. Otherwise, the consequences, if we do not recognize its inner nature, there are negative consequences, like monsters. So, William James knew this very well. We are at the foundation of the scientific approach to psychology. He knew this very, very well. If you look at the variety of religious experiences that he wrote more than 1 century ago, he had a very clear idea that the fact that consciousness is not just the ultimately rational way of approaching reality in ourselves. But there are other ways, there are other states of consciousness that transverse our mind all the time. We don't need to only speak about psychedelics. Of course, they are very important, they are the focus of this conference. But I would like to enlarge your attention to other states of consciousness in which experiences such as those that we recently heard before can also happen. For example, lucid dreams or other states like trance states in hypnosis and so on. Of course, processes become different, but the key core aspect that I want to focus on is this one. And he said, for example, you can read all the phrases that he read, but the last one, he said, no account of the universe as a whole can be definitive if these other forms of consciousness are ignored. This is a very strong message, and not say, oh yeah, let's do it like for fun, let's have some fun in the party. He was saying no account of the universe as a whole can be definitive if these other forms of consciousness are ignored. So is science taking this message? It has stopped for a very long time. But perhaps some science say that things might be changing, thanks to the work of many people. Boundary work in remote labs, but more and more in more institutions as we are seeing today in the last few years. So what is consciousness? What are the dimensions in which consciousness can vary? When we talk about consciousness, many neuroscientists, they say, oh, the consciousness is that thing that you don't have when you dream or when you sleep. We are couple, you are conscious again. Well, I definitely do not agree with this. Consciousness is our ability to have experiences. And this does not go away when we sleep, when we dream, when we have lucid dreams. Even when we are sleeping without dreaming, we are conscious. It's just that different states of consciousness, they don't communicate very well with each other, within the same individual. It's very useful to keep memory of these different states of consciousness that we do inhabit during the day and the night. But scientific investigation can help us to understand better. You see, rationality comes in. Let's try to categorize, to see which are the key aspects and key properties of consciousness that vary, that are modulated during the different states of consciousness. Well, we can have the aspects that concern our consciousness of the body image, how we see ourselves. Lewis Carroll in Alice in Wonderland is describing how this perception can change under the effect of some kind of substance or alteration of consciousness when you go deeply with the expression of the cookies. Perception, of course, ordinarily we interpret things as we are used to, but line changes, and why we are saying that the previous experience with the microphone was psychedelic, because things didn't go as ourly expected. We have predictions, models, things to be in a certain way. If they are not, if there is a time delay, for example, between what I say and what I hear, this creates disorientation. And this can lead also to visual illusions or auditory illusions and so on. I will go faster now, but because there's many of them, so emotions, of course, emotions can be balanced when you are in a state. It can be very strong and deep when you are in outer states. Memory, we might have access to aspects of our memory when we are in outer states of consciousness, normally we don't have access to. It is a controversial literature, but for example, in hypnotic trance, sometimes we can use these states of consciousness to access aspects that the ordinary mind of these people cannot access. It is controversial, but definitely something that is investigated. Cognition, metacognition, the sense of control of ourselves. In an ordinary state of consciousness, we think that we are in control of ourselves most of the time. In other states of consciousness, we lose this. It's actually one of the first things that we lose. We become testimony to whatever our brain is briefing us, into possession, the spirit of possession, when the spirit comes into the body of a person, this person acts translating his or her will as the will of the spirit or the demon, for example. The sense of time, one of the first things that actually changes in antecedent of consciousness. In ordinary states, we are more or less aligned with what the watch tells us, but when we are in antecedent of consciousness, this synchronization changes. Things can be extremely fast or extremely slow up to the point of giving us a sensation of being of stopping completely and living infinitely in a kind of a void of time. Creativity, this balance between our ability to produce new ideas and the ability to judge them as good or not. In antecedent of consciousness, there's a long tradition with many arts. This can be increased compared to when we are in ordinary state. The sense of meaning, like from the narration we heard before, encounters, situations, insights, they can be very, very meaningful. They can change our life, not just for a momentary sense of wonder, but really for a full, deeper understanding and change of perspective that can give a strong turn to our life just in a moment. And lastly, perhaps the most important of all, the sense of identity. In an ordinary state of consciousness, we create a separation between our inner, ourself, our identity, our ego, call it however involved that. But we separate from other people, I don't think I'm you, and from the external environment. I look at the external environment as something that is not part of my sense of identity. Well, in many other states of consciousness, these changes, and might change dramatically up to a sense of strong dissolution of the self, as is described in many psychedelic experiences or mystical states throughout the history of many cultures. Like Christianity, for example, is full of these pictures from many saints of the achievement of these states, in which you feel a strong sense of connectedness of your consciousness, which is not localized into a single individual, a single body, a single narrative. This is the distributed in everything that exists. Now, these properties can affect the different. So you can look at these properties I quickly listed for you, like things that we can tune on a panel of a device. No, we can change the volume, the bass, the high tones. Well, in our consciousness, we can change all of those, and this brings us to a complex, different state, depending on which manipulations we will do with opponents. So we can start from our ordinary state of consciousness, the one that we all are familiar with. But then everybody has dreams, very powerful, and many of those manipulations are actually different from the ordinary state. Lucid dreams is a topic that I'm interested in research very much. Is the ability to be fully self-conscious of yourself and the fact that you are dreaming. This changes the experience very much. I'm sure very many of you have had this experience, so you know what we are talking about. But also consciousness, when we are not sleeping, dreaming, but we are sleeping. This is harder to be mindful of. And people who do meditation might have these experiences, just being aware of nothing, pure blindness, but still you have the testimony. You feel your very essence as being the ability to be a witness. In this case, a witness of nothing. And there are many studies that are coming out. They're very interesting to look at the topic of white dreams and other things of this sort. Meditation, contemplative states, another topic that interested me very much. There's very many types of anger exercises that can bring you willingly to upper states of consciousness for your good and for the good of the group to which you belong, by developing compassion, for example. hypnotic trance, I already mentioned that, but there are many other spontaneous states that are continually going through ourselves: fasting, sexual activities, orgasm, breathing regulation, near-death experiences, and also, of course, pathological conditions. But also environmental inductors like the sensory deprivation, sensory hyperregularization, lights, frequent lights, music, dance, video games, virtual realities, and more we will also see neurotechnologies capable of inducing alterations in the sensory consciousness. And lastly, of course, psychedelics, classic psychedelics such as psilocybin, DMT, mescaline, LSD, or all classics like we will discuss about today, MDMA, campus, and so on and so forth. So what are the scientific interpretations of this? We will hear more today. There is no consensus, but at least we can be happy that this endeavor was not just a fringe aspect of scientific research, as we counted for. At least I see it as a core that probably will be more and more in the next months and years. So an old idea, which is more from literary work, Aldous Huxley or Bergson, they interpret the ordinary consciousness not something that opens up our mind to the world. Actually, it does the opposite. It closes. It's like a reducing bar that is selecting for us, a little bit like attention does, what is relevant to our self, and mostly to our survival. So this idea is that the world is very rich, there's a lot of stuff, but consciousness helps us to select only those things that are relevant to the survival of our body within our social pool. Well, now we can say that we are starting to see that this metaphorical interpretation of consciousness and how things can be very different when we are in outer states of consciousness, with the idea that this valve is opening up. So other aspects of reality come in, and we are aware of things that we normally are not aware of, can find a basis in one way very important to interpret brain activity. You probably have heard about default mode network. These a collection of brain regions that you see under these blue spheres that are known to be very much involved in this construction of a sense of identity or self. And we know from several studies that this network involves synchronization between the activity within this region and uncorrelation with other networks, such as, for example, the sensory network, that is involved instead in being attentive to what happens outside of ourselves. So it's a kind of dichotomy in the brain. Things that are a process where we are into the narrative of ourselves, and things that become involved when we pay attention to the external world. And so you can see this idea of synchronization between default mode regions in this brain. What happens in after states of consciousness, psychedelic states included? Well, this is what happens basically. There is a transformation of the way in which the ordinary way of communication in the brain is altered. It's altered in two directions. One is a desynchronization between areas that normally speak out to each other. So, for example, within default mode network, there is a desynchronization. But also there is another effect. There is a high communication between brain areas that normally do not communicate with each other. So basically it's like a difference within a party, where everybody talks only to the usual friends and knows the other. Where psychedelic party is instead where everyone talks to everyone. There is no previous stability that there is respect to. Well, this is quite known. Also, this is a kind of older study, 2014, which you can see, if you're not familiar with these representations. So every dot on the boundary of this circle represents a brain region, and the connections represent communications between brain regions. So on the left, you can see how an average brain is when it is in an orphaned state. You can see some things communicate strongly with some other things, but mostly there is no communication between several areas. When you take psilocybin, like in this experiment, you can see that things change quite a lot. In the sense that the previous pathways are completely overturned, and new pathways, new communications, new synchronization, new functional connectivity for the point that it covers we want, but is a exchange information takes place all over. So one way to interpret that altruism functions is that these states introduce variation on the level of entropy during activity. What does it mean entropy? It's observed on the information theory of physics, and basically it's unmanageability and complexity. If you find these components injected into a system, you are increasing entropy. And so we can look at our consciousness as something that can vary along the spectrum of entropy. We can have very low entropy, as you see on the left, in coma, anesthesia, epileptic seizure, deep sleep depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, addiction, depends on substances, and rigid thinking. So low entropy means high stability, always the usual suspects rigidity. Whereas if you go to the right of the spectrum, you have high entropy states, where there is increased uncertainty, increased complexity in terms of plane activations, and the states are more flexible. It's like going from ice to liquid water or even vapor. So psychedelic states are seen as being highly entropic. Infantile consciousness, dreams, sensory deprivation, so on and so forth. And so this higher flexibility opens up to possibilities for therapeutic interventions. So if in psychopathologies, the organization of the brain in many psychopathologies, that again think to depression, for example, there is a rigid structuring, there is suppression and insensitivity to bottom-up signaling from the brain. There's a kind of a rigid and frozen system with minimal responses to whatever perturbation can come from inside or outside. When we are under the high entropic upper states of consciousness, the brain organizations becomes liquid, more liquid. It opens up to the possibility of reducing its hierarchical processing, and so the system becomes more sensitive. Like if you throw a ball into a frozen lake, this doesn't have a real effect because the rigidity of the ice absorbs all the energy. Whereas if you have a liquid lake and you throw a ball, this will have a lot of perturbation on the surface. And so this is a metaphor, but it takes quite well what we should do for the way in which we should interpret what happens in states of consciousness that are altered in terms of HP. So this is a study that came out a few months ago, still in 2024, where on the left you can see in red on the surface of the brain those regions that desynchronize while people are taking psychedelics, in particular psilocybin. So as you can see, there is a massive desynchronization compared to the usual ordinary state of mind when you take a substance like this. And it's a kind of acute, effect during the experience. But what is more important, perhaps, is the fact that this desynchronization of some evidence, it lasts much longer than just the experiencing itself under the effect of a substance. What you see in Barrier B on the center is you can see those regions, especially in the hippocampus, that are still desynchronized after 3 weeks, 4 weeks from the taking of just one dose of psilocybin. So the idea is not just take outer states of consciousness with substances, and I personally that also without substances, but with other methods, is that the effects are not just during the outer states of consciousness, but also they might persist. Of course, the idea is that neuroplasticity is involved, that is to say, the ability of the brain to restructure its networks, the brain, the white matter. And we can observe this also, we are starting to observe this in animals. It's not seen quite well in humans yet, perhaps we will hear in one of the talks later. But definitely these are suggesting from this possibility. So 67 is just to conclude again with a metaphor. What happens to a culture that doesn't recognize the importance of outer states of consciousness? Read the Macaulay found Euryclides, ancient Greece. There is this tragedy in which Euryclides described what happens when the king of Thebes, Theseus, does not recognize the divinity of Dionysus, the god of the alteration of mind through namings. His god only recognizes rationality. It doesn't recognize the lineage of Dionysus. Dionysus, he was very upset. And he goes there under the dress of a woman. He liked to dress a lot like women, perhaps he was a woman, or beyond that. And he looks for revenge. The first things he does, he makes all the women mad and become menace. They go in the boats on the mountains. They start to eat animals alive. And then it's the turn of the king himself. He's put into a light alteration of consciousness. He becomes interested in what the women are doing on the mountains. He goes there to spy them. But these women, they think that he's alive. And so they kill him. They dismember him. You see here a representation in the Pompeii, which is actually where I come from. And his hand was cut by his mother, Agave. She didn't recognize his son. He thought he was a danger. So the society is destroyed because Dionysus was not happy. Well, this is a kind of representation, of course, in metaphorical terms, of what can happen to an older group that does not recognize the inner nature of our mind. So I hope that scientific research can help us in this cultural transformation of recognizing the importance of these things. Thank you.